Hello, Catie Scarlett. Welcome back to our Welcome Back Alumni Series. We are so excited to hear from you today. I actually brought your eighth grade graduation yearbook,
Oh boy.
2011. Catie went to school with my children, and right in between. My son graduated in 2010 and my daughter 2012. So we've known each other for 25 years and love Catie and her family. I want to introduce Catie's professional and educational background after leaving Holy Comforter. She went to Childs High School, correct, Catie?
Yes.
And all those years from probably elementary school, middle school, and high school, Catie danced for 9 years, like I'm sure many of you all do. She went on, not many, but a few of you. Catie went on to Florida State University, got a Bachelor of Science degree in Public Safety and Security with a Crime Science Investigation program emphasis. She graduated from FSU in 2022 with a Master of Science degree in Law Enforcement Intelligence. She is currently a crime science investigator with the Chattanooga Police Department. Very impressive resume, Catie. Thank you for being here, and I'm turning it over to you. Thank you, Catie.
All right. Thank you for the introduction. I'll probably repeat a little bit of that in my first slide, but hi everybody. Nice to meet y'all. My name's Catie Scarlett, and this is kind of what Miss Thompson just said, but I started school at Holy Comforter in 2002 in kindergarten. I was a member of the Tallahassee Ballet from 2006 to 2013. I think it was actually 2014, but either way, graduated from Holy Comforter 8th grade in 2011, attended Childs High School, and then I went to Florida State University. I began at the main campus, switched my major a ton. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Then I got into criminology, didn't know where that was going to take me. I ended up speaking with one advisor who told me about the crime scene investigation program at the Panama City campus. I went over, checked it out, thought it was pretty cool, switched majors and campuses halfway through junior year. And my first day of classes in Panama City, I had my forensic death investigation class, and I was immediately hooked. So that's how I got started with crime scene. And that's how I'm here today. I think y'all probably still have ACE week. I do remember 6th grade, my ACE week, I did crime scene investigation. So fun little tie-in. I just thought it was cool in the moment, and later that's what I'm doing as a career. So you never know what you might find during ACE week. So my professional background, during senior year, I moved out to Phoenix, Arizona, and I was an intern with Phoenix Police Department. They had a really great internship program. I was able to go through different units, including robbery, homicide, NIBIN, crime lab, and kind of experience all aspects of the police department. They did not have any crime scene openings when I graduated, so I came back to graduate, and one of the girls let me know at graduation that Pensacola was hiring for death investigators. So I went over, interviewed, and moved to Pensacola 2 weeks later and got hired on as a forensic death investigator. So there I handled only death scenes. So it's we work very closely with crime scene investigators, but we're the side that does the autopsies and determines cause and manner of death, and we handle that side of it. Then I did apply for an opening in Phoenix once they had one, and went back out to Phoenix and was a crime scene specialist out there. Then for personal reasons came back to Pensacola. I jumped around a lot my first couple years trying to figure out where I wanted to be. So then back to Pensacola, and I worked for Escambia County Sheriff's Office doing crime scene for a little over 3 years. And just over a year ago, was ready for another change, and that brought me to Chattanooga Police Department, where I'm a crime scene investigator now. I love it here. I will probably be here a very, very, very long time. Amongst all of this moving and learning, I decided to go back to school, where I got my Master of Science degree in Law Enforcement Intelligence. So back to school online during working full time. And I actually did graduate in 2022. I put the wrong year on my slide. And then also during that time, I did take the exam to become a certified crime scene analyst through the International Association for Identification. That is the International Association. It's the huge association for forensics. So we have people in a variety of forensic fields, all part of this group. It's a great group to join. You can join as a student. I'm not sure if there's a age minimum, so I'm not sure if this group can join quite yet, but it's great to get your foot in the door, get an in on free trainings, and start kind of building your resume that way. They have different levels of certification, and the crime scene analyst is level 2 of 3. So I did that last year, and I'm hoping in a year and a half to go for level 3, because you need 6 years experience for level 3. So almost there. So that's kind of an overview of my professional background. Also, when I was with Escambia County Sheriff's Office, I was a field training officer, which means that all of our new hires would go through a training program. So I did a lot of the training on the lab, chemical processing, as well as field training itself, where I would take the trainee out to the field and kind of teach them essentially our entire job and do like daily reports and kind of guide them and train them up to be a solo investigator. So crime scene investigation is very, very, very broad. So first of all, there's sworn crime scene investigators and civilian crime scene investigators. I'm civilian, so I'm not a sworn police officer. Everywhere that I've worked in a crime scene capacity, I've been in a civilian role. My current agency, we are half sworn and half civilian. So that means half of our unit are sworn police officers that are also crime scene investigators. There are benefits and drawbacks to both sworn and civilian, but if you're thinking of doing this as a career in your future, that's something to think about. Is the area you're in, do they have sworn, do they have civilian, do you want to be sworn, things like that, because you can go different ways. Also in the world of forensics, there are so many different forensic disciplines. Crime scene investigation is just one of those. You can also go the scientific route and become a forensic scientist. You can then work in crime labs doing toxicology, serology, controlled substances, latent print analysis, entomology, forensic botany, unknown documents. It just goes on and on and on and on. So many opportunities out there for forensics. But as far as crime scene goes, what do we respond to? So we'll respond to burglaries, robberies, aggravated assaults, which are like shootings, stabbings, things like that. Death investigations. There are 5 manners of death. They are natural, accident, suicide, homicide, and undetermined. As far as crime scene goes, we always go to accidents, suicides, and homicides. We will go out to undetermined depending on the situation. Sometimes we'll get wrapped up in natural deaths if we're not sure what the situation is and we get called out to assist patrol, and then we go out and we realize, okay, this is a natural death, and then we'll pass it along. But also that is agency dependent, what you'll respond out to. My previous agency in Florida, we responded to just about everything. I went to a lot of natural deaths. I went to a lot of minor burglaries where nothing was really taken. Here in Chattanooga, we mainly respond to just the big things: shootings, stabbings, homicides, suicides, all of that. So that will vary depending on the area you're in and the needs of your agency. So we do a lot. There's also a lot of overlap with other units and other agencies. So again, the medical examiner's office, we work very closely with them because one of the main things we respond to are deaths. And so we have to notify the medical examiner's office. They come out and do their investigation, which kind of mirrors ours. They'll go out and they'll take their own photographs, get all the information they need to determine the cause and manner of death. So we do work very closely with them. Sometimes we will attend autopsies. We will pick up evidence that they received during autopsies. If somebody is shot and there's still bullets inside of them, we have to go collect the bullets after they've completed the autopsy, things like that. And then also as a crime scene investigator, we'll overlap with like SVU if we're doing rape cases, child abductions, things like that, robbery, gun team, homicide, narcotics, and then of course patrol, because patrol should be on every scene we go to, especially being civilian. patrol has to be out there because we don't have ballistic vests and guns and all that to protect ourselves. So, and patrol is the first on scene. So we get a lot of our information from patrol, and that's kind of our starting point. We will also overlap with state and federal agencies. If we have an officer involved shooting, we will bring in the state agency. Here it's TBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. In Florida, it was FDLE. And then sometimes even larger, we would have to bring in like the FBI. So for instance, right when I had left the medical examiner's office in Florida, they had the big shooting at the Naval Air Station. So a lot of different agencies came together to assist, and that included the FBI. So we will overlap with different agencies, or if like things cross jurisdictional boundaries, and being so close to Georgia, we have a lot of people running from Tennessee into Georgia or vice versa. So we do a lot of collaboration with surrounding agencies. And then the media. So as you can see by the picture on screen, they like to show up everywhere we go and take pictures. They like to get information. Normally we have a designated person that speaks with the media, gives them the information to put out. But as you can see, we put up barriers because they will try to get their cameras in there, and we try to be respectful of the victims and their families and try to keep it as contained as possible. It's harder when we're outside, but the media does like to show up, and we do have to work with them. So lots and lots and lots of overlap. So what do? We do a lot of things. So the main thing we do, no matter what type of scene it is document. And we do this in a lot of ways. So through photography, videography, notes, diagrams, measurements, scanning. It is the most important thing. They will use our photographs, our videos, our scans in court. Court is another necessary evil when it comes to crime scene. So they will publish our photos, and we'll have to speak about what we did, what we saw, what we photographed. So documentation is very, very, very important. And we want to document it as is. So as it is when we arrive on scene is how we want to document it. Then once we go through the scene, we identify our items of evidence, and we then search the scene and have to move things and manipulate things. We have to take more photographs. So we are constantly photographing, rephotographing, documenting everything as best we can. So main part of our job, documentation. So photography, again, it's huge. I could talk for hours and hours and hours and not even scratch the surface. So I've taken over 120 training hours in photography alone, and there's still a lot to learn. So we use the overall mid-range close-up method. When you enter a crime scene, you take photos overall. So just kind of panning the room from all sides. And then once you identify items of evidence, you will take like a mid-range photo. And this kind of orients the item to other objects in the room. So it's a little closer in, but you can kind of get a better idea of distance and space in the room. And then your close-up, where it's just a close-up of that item that you're focused in on. And then we have with and without scale. So we have to scale a lot of things, especially if it's fingerprints, shoe prints, anything where the size is going to make a difference. And you want to do it with and without scale, because if you just put the scale down and get a close-up photo, when that goes to court, a defense attorney could be like, oh, what are you covering up with your scale? So we take a lot of photos, and we want to make sure we have a scale in where it's necessary. We also do a lot of specialty photography. A lot of crime occurs at night and outside, and sometimes it's raining, here snowing. I was on a homicide scene and it started snowing in January, so that was new to me. But so we have to learn a lot of functions with our camera to be able to still properly document our scene as needed. On top of that, there's other things such as this photo below. So it's a cropped photo, but that's actually a bullet hole in the car, and we stuck a rod in there with a laser. So, you know, when you have a laser pointer, it just hits the wall and you can see the end point. But we want to be able to document the entire path of where that bullet went. So we have to do like a timed exposure and either use a piece of paper or fog to light up that whole beam to allow the camera to see the whole path of that bullet. So things like that. And then later we'll see like blue star and other chemicals where it might need to be dark for us to observe the reaction, but then we still need to document it. So we'll also do perspective photos. So this can be from a witness's point of view, victim's point of view, suspect's point of view. So very, very wide variety of things we can do with our camera. I didn't put it in here, but aerial photography in Phoenix, they would put you up in a helicopter and you'd have to take aerial view photography of the scene. Here we have drones, which is fantastic. So there's just lots that we can do with that. So once you photograph your scene and document everything, evidence collection is very important. So you want to make sure you're properly packaging each item of evidence. Most items will go in a paper bag. That's just kind of the standard. Some things will go in plastic, such as certain narcotics, but anything, especially if it's anything with biohazardous material, must go in paper so that it's breathable, it doesn't mold, it doesn't, you know, get gross. So with damp items, we collect a lot of damp items, a lot of clothing that's soaked in blood, so we have to make sure it's thoroughly dried before we package it up. And then we have to label everything that's biohazard with a biohazard label, because we will get in trouble if something gets sent to the lab and they go to handle it and they don't know there's biohazardous material, and then they go and pull it out, and then they might put themselves at risk if they're not wearing the proper protective equipment because they were not aware that there was biomaterial. Same with sharps. This is something to really look out for when we're searching certain areas, especially known high drug use areas. We'll come across a lot of syringes mainly. I've done that before, thankfully not poked myself, but also when we collect these, we want to put them in the proper sharps containers so that we're not putting anybody at risk. And then PPE is very important. So that's your personal protective equipment. So that's your gloves, mask, goggles, shoe coverings, Tyvek suit, all of that, because we will be exposed to a lot. So we want to make sure we're always protecting ourselves, because I've been walking through, you know, blood, maggots, vomit, decomp, just about anything you can imagine, it will potentially get on you. So always wear your PPE. And here's a lovely example of PPE. I forgot to mention, I'm a teaching assistant for Florida State. What was that?
I said you're at the bottom of that picture.
Oh, yeah.
You're the poser at the bottom of the picture.
Yep. So this was a class I was assisting to teach. I'm a teaching assistant with Florida State's crime scene classes, and in the summer when we have our hands-on labs, this was what I like to call Dexter Day. So this is when we were able to make our Dexter room and do the blood spatter and see how all of that works. So wear your PPE so you don't end up like this. But normally we show up after the fact, but this is why we wear it. So we also do a lot of processing for DNA. So Locard's exchange principle is essentially when two items come into contact with one another, something is left behind and something is taken with. So that's the principle. Like even if I touch this surface, I might not leave a nice fingerprint behind, but I'm leaving something, no matter how minute that is. So that goes to touch DNA. So epithelial DNA, that's just the normal skin cells that come off of you all day long. So we swab a lot for DNA that we can't even see. So that's when you have to really use your brain, think of what you're looking at in the scene and what do you think was touched and why, so you can decide where is the most viable area to swab for possible DNA. And then the visible, the bodily fluids, so blood, semen, saliva, We can also take these from victims, suspects, things like that. Normally that's just a swab on the inside of your mouth for a DNA standard to compare against DNA taken from scenes. So we do a lot of that. And then the other thing we mainly process for, so we swab, that's how we collect our DNA swabs. And then fingerprints. So the two essentially main things about fingerprints are they are persistent. So the fingerprints that you were born with are the fingerprints you die with. They do not change over your lifetime. If you get an injury, you could have scars that are permanent. As you age, your ridges will fade and maybe widen or just become less pronounced, but they do not really change. And then they are unique. So nobody in the world has the same two fingerprints. I won't get into this case study, but there was a case, two gentlemen, same name, same biometric measurements. So one guy got arrested and he was like, that's not me, that's not me. And they're like, yes, it is. They took his fingerprints. They found the other guy with the same name, same measurements, took his fingerprints, and they were completely different. So that's why we kind of made that shift from other types of identification to fingerprints, because nobody has been found to have the same fingerprints.
Hey, Katie, we only
yes.
have a few minutes left, so do you mind if I let a couple of kiddos ask questions?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we got one.
How often do you go to a crime scene? Like,
I got it.
multiple times?
How often do you go to a crime scene?
It completely depends. Sometimes we will have multiple a day. Sometimes we can go a couple days without. And it does seem to be seasonal. Summer tends to pick up and winter slows down, but different. It completely depends.
All right, come up here, quick, Mo, quick. Sailor, come up.
What do you do when you're not at a crime scene?
Okay, so when we're not at a crime scene, tons of things we could be doing search warrants, or when patrol collects evidence that we were not part of the scene, they could put in processing requests. So if they worked a scene that crime scene was not required on, but they collect a gun or a drug bag, they could ask us to process it. So we have processing requests and other just around the office things that keep us busy.
Have you ever been in contact with a suspect?
Suspect.
Sorry, I'm struggling.
Have you ever been in contact with a suspect?
Oh yes, we process suspects fairly frequently. Typically they're not on the scene. Typically they've been detained and they're in the interview room, and I'll have to go and photograph them. And if we have a search warrant, I'll have to take their fingerprints, their DNA, sometimes their clothes, things like that. So I do have to sometimes work with suspects, and sometimes they're friendly and sometimes they are not. I had one woman fling bloody socks at me, so it depends.
Have you ever gotten like injured on the job?
I have not. Well, not significantly. I was crawling into a trunk of a car because we couldn't get it open, and I went to pull the release, and there was a bullet hole that had come through the back, and I like cut my finger on the metal. But luckily there was no biohazard that I was worried about, but I've not been injured, thankfully.
All right, so how would you compare the reality of your job to all the TV shows?
Oh yeah. So that's one thing I was going to get to. I made this presentation far too long. So we call that the CSI effect, and they'll even bring that up in court. It is not the same. Certain things are, but it is a much slower process. The technology they show on TV, I wish it was that good. It's typically not. And normally, because my area of expertise is just the crime scene, we do the field forensics. And on the TV shows, the same person gets to chase the bad guy, do the forensics, do the follow-up, arrest them, so we don't get to see the case through all the time. So there is a big difference, and it's a lot slower of a process with not instant results.
All right, what do you say, ladies and gentlemen?
Thank you.